Hello and welcome to IndiTalk. This is a show on which we ruminate on and discuss controversial issues of national importance, and today's subject is demonetization. Demonetization? Now, again, well, why are we talking about it? Well, for the simple reason that people have begun to think that the effects of demonetization that took place actually on November 9, 2016, when Prime Minister Modi made a surprise national appearance on television and announced the demonetization of high-value notes, which virtually turned everybody's money into worthless pieces of paper and gave them about 50 days in which to change it for new currency. And one of the main reasons Modi said was this was an attack on black money, and that all the black money that had been stored would actually return to the banks. And there would be a surplus, meaning that if there was 3 lakh crores or 4 lakh crores or 5 lakh crores of black money, if it was worthless and had to be exchanged, it would be put back in the banks, and the banks would have that much of a surplus, which could be destroyed, and the RBI could then print new notes and distribute them or use them for economic advantage or to help the poor or subsidize the poor, and that this would not then cause inflation, because if you have an X amount of money returned and you add an X amount to it, it causes inflation. But if you take that X amount and minus it and trash it and you create the same X amount, well, that's money that was not with the banks that can be then used for development purposes. Now, today the reason I'm discussing demonetization again is because one of the biggest experts, one of the world's most renowned experts on demonetization, Professor Arun Kumar, who also teaches at Columbia University in New York as well as Yale, both what are known as Ivy League colleges, some of the most prestigious institutions, and also is one of the original authors of a book called The Black Money Economy in India, which is taught and in terms of tax evasion and other such evils. It's taught all over the world. And finally, Arun Kumar, whom we also featured in India Legal and on our websites shortly after demonetization was involved, had things to say about it. He hadn't done that much research, but he had a lot to say about what might be the consequences. And that story that we ran at that time went absolutely viral. Now today, Arun Kumar has last week produced this book. It's called Demonetization and the Black Economy. Demonetization and the Black Economy. It is rapidly becoming a bestseller. Usually, books on economics and textbooks like these written by professors with beards don't really become popular. But Arun Kumar is once again greatly in demand, and we were kind enough to get an advance copy of this. And I would urge people interested in the subject, not from a political point of view, not necessarily to use it as a political attack either on Modi or on Arun Jaitley or anybody like that. It's not really a political attack. It's a very, very objective and very sober, but really it's kind of a scary look at whether this demonetization was the correct step or was it not. And if it was not, what did it do to the economy? Now, one of the things that people talk about when they say is that it took only a very short time for the economy to recover. Now, if the government economists are saying the economy, using the word recover, which means implicitly they're admitting that the economy did take a plunge, which it did. The GDP had fallen to between 5 and 6% at one point. Markets were down, but they say it's recovering now. But this study basically is something that I think we all need to look at very carefully and very objectively before we submit ourselves to any other kind of economic experimentation. Like this very scholarly piece of work, and I've noted a few points here from which from the book, of course, and I will posit these points. I said, why did not demonetization affect black money? In that question itself, I know it's a loaded question, because actually all the money that was supposed to be out there actually came back to the banks. It's still being counted, but apparently no black money was actually recovered. Did it affect terrorism? As it was said that it was used for terror financing and terrorism would come down. Unfortunately, terrorism still remains a very big problem for India. Did it stop counterfeiting? Well, from all the data that's coming from the Reserve Bank of India itself, it showed that it did not really take care of the counterfeiting problem. Then, did it lead to greater political and social instability? Now, this is something that we have to look at. We can't avoid it. Now, you've got to remember one thing, that we're talking about the economy again growing at 7.6%, the GDP, gross domestic product, or some people call it also the fixed capital formation. The figures may look good at a macro level, and perhaps they are something to be happy about. It's easy to say that, look, we've again overtaken China. But the sad part is foreign investment, real investment. I'm not talking about sectors like the financial sector or like the like the stock markets, which are basically hot markets, right? I'm not talking about those at all. I'm talking about real investment in industry. Investments that create jobs, either foreign direct investment or foreign participation or joint ventures or even Indian private investment. Unfortunately, if you look at the figures being put out by FICCI and ASSOCHAM and other such groups, and you will find out that investment really is not rising at all, and that jobs are not being created. But why? What has really hurt is that, while the organized sector may initially absorb the shocks of 86 or 87% of the money being sucked out of the economy, but ultimately the organized sector is dependent on the unorganized sector, which is the smaller sectors, SMSEs, mandis, grain markets, small shopkeepers, self-employed craftsmen, electricians, plumbers, the little big men of the Indian economy. Unfortunately, you know what? That the 46 or 47% of the entire output of the Indian economy comes from this sector. And this is the sector that's been hurt the most. And this sector, this unorganized sector, employs 93% of all the workers of this country. So now, if you're going to affect these many people, which make such a huge contribution to the Indian economy, surely there are going to be social tensions. And social tensions are rising. There is rising unemployment. There are farmers' marches, as we've talked about. There is rural distress, because the rural economy also was hit very hard by demonetization. And therefore, I am constrained to believe, at least on the basis of the theory posited by Professor Arun Kumar, that the demonetization is not and was not a short-term phenomenon. It basically is showing its consequences now and will have long-term consequences, and I hope they are not as adverse as many of the Jonahs are predicting. That's all for today on IndiTalk. I am Inderjit Badhwar. We'll be back again with more controversial issues. Catch us.